This has been a long time coming, but I am finally going to do it. I am going to attach the base of the forward superstructure to the shelter deck. But first, as always, there always seems to be something that needs to be done before I attach this part of the superstructure to the shelter deck. In this case, it's very simple. I need to first install the base of the tripod mast. Long ago, so long ago that I don't remember which video I did it in, I prepared these components. Then I had the whole bathroom renovation thing, which took me on a massive tangent. But that's all done now, and we're finally coming back to this step. So at this point, since everything has been previously prepared, it's a simple matter of applying some Revell Contactor Professional to the hole in the shelter deck, and then inserting the base of the tripod mast into those holes. Before the glue sets, I want to ensure that these sections of the tripod mast are properly positioned. So I loosely fit the base of the forward superstructure onto the shelter deck, and then adjust the position of these sections of mast to ensure that they line up correctly. I leave the forward superstructure in place while the glue for the base of the tripod mast sets. Once the glue has sufficiently set, I then lift the forward superstructure off of the shelter deck to install the bottom ladder. This ladder has to be installed from underneath since there isn't sufficient clearance for me to install it from above due to the upper deck. Once the ladder is held in place with friction, I then place the forward superstructure back on the shelter deck and then work on positioning the ladder correctly. Once in its correct position, I glue the top of the ladder in place using extra thin superglue. I then once again remove the forward superstructure and now prepare it for installation. First, I place small drops of glue on top of the base of the tripod masts, and then carefully place Revell Contactor Professional on the base of the forward superstructure. I take care to ensure that the excess glue runs into the interior cavity of the part. I'm trying to avoid getting any excess glue onto the exterior faces of these bulkheads. I don't mind there being excess glue so long as that excess glue is concealed on the inside of the structure. Once the glue is fully applied to the base, I then place the structure onto the shelter deck and push it down. The fit is good because I have prepared this area in advance, so it does fit together rather well. Although I did apply Revell Contactor Professional along most of the bottom faces of these bulkheads, I do want to reinforce the bonds a bit more with extra thin plastic cement. I'm trying to get the bond of this component to the ship to be as good as possible. I don't want this to come loose at some later stage. And there isn't really an issue with mixing glues like this, so I'll do this just to ensure a proper bond. Once all the glue is applied, I then wrap the area in tape to ensure that there is a good firm contact between these components. In areas I do notice that there does appear to be some glue lacking, so I reinforce those areas with some more extra thin plastic cement. After letting the glue dry overnight, I remove the tape and then prepare to fill gaps between these components. I'm going to fill these gaps with plastic putty, and I don't want to get that excess putty all over the place, so I'll mask off the area so I can really focus on just getting it into the gap. This is going to make it easier to clean up later because any excess will be on the tape, which I can then simply peel off. After the area is taped off, I then apply the putty with a toothpick. Before the putty has fully dried, I then remove the tape along with the excess putty, leaving just a small stripe of putty in the crevice. Since the putty is still soft, I'm able to manipulate it a little bit further and push it down and smooth it out. This is all going to just make it a little bit more easier to clean up and sand. I have also noticed at this point that it is actually quite thick, so I can thin it down quite a lot still. Once again, this is just going to make it easier to deal with later. I'm trying to avoid sanding in a very constrained space. So I use Tamiya lacquer thinners to dissolve this putty a little bit more and smooth it out with a brush. After doing that, I then leave the putty for a good number of hours to fully dry and then sand it using 400 grit sandpaper. It is a very constrained area, so I'm glad that I took the time to try and smooth it out as much as possible before it hardened, because it is very difficult to sand this. But I am able to get in there and get it worked pretty smooth. I had been building this model to minimize the number of gaps that I'd have to sand with the entire ship in a constrained position like this. So I'm quite happy that I only have to do these two very small, roughly 1 centimeter long strips. After sanding, I mask off the area and then spray the area with Tamiya XF53, the color that I'm using for Hood's Superstructure. Since it's such a small area to touch up and I've been quite careful, I don't really see the need to use Surfacer. After spraying with XF53, the defects are revealed, and you can see there are some minor corrections that need to be made to both the port and starboard side. The effect of sanding is now very visual since the paint gets removed in the area where it is high, and I'm able to work it back so that it is smooth. The only problem is that it is a bit too smooth, and I would like a more defined corner. So I use the file to dig a slight groove back into that edge. Not one that's deep, but one that shows a clear transition between the panels of this wall. And then once again spray the area with XF53. After that final round of spraying, I then remove the tape and proceed to do a few more touch-ups of XF53 with the brush. That concludes the installation of the forward superstructure's base onto the shelter deck. In the next video, I will be building and installing structures that connect the signalman's shelters to the base of the gun directors. If you would like to support this channel or see how this ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.